All right, so today we have Nick Schrock back to the Data Exchange podcast. He is the founder of Dagster and CTO. They have two websites, dagster.io and dagsterlabs.com. And the tagline, at least on the main site, which is dagster.io, is your platform for AI and data pipelines. With that, Nick, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
All right, so when I had you back, the big topic really back then was orchestration. There were all these orchestration projects. And now orchestration seems to be becoming a leverage point for AI apps. So what's your sense of the importance, centrality of orchestration? And is orchestration going to be key for AI apps to either succeed or not?
100%. So I will split orchestration into kind of two chunks because I think it's relevant in the AI era. The first one is what Dagster doesn't do, and that's highly dynamic orchestration that is kind of meant for agentic workflows that are in the critical path of user interactions. So, those type of systems have different needs that Dagster does not kind of seek to address. What Dagster is for is building data pipelines and data platforms. And that is absolutely essential to the age of AI. So on a number of dimensions. One is just straight up, it's funny, I was at the Databricks conference and even Jamie Dimon was saying like, well, all the value is actually in the data. And I about stood up and, started chanting because he's right? Especially in the enterprise, like once you have the data set up, if you don't have your data in a structured way where you can understand the semantics, there's a very limited amount you can do with it in either ML or AI. It's just the way it goes. So really the foundation of any AI strategy at a company is the data strategy. And we see this in our customer base. Like for example, Poolside is a customer of ours, and they use Dagster to orchestrate their entire platform all the way from data ingest to foundation model training. So we see that already. The data platform is the AI platform, which is the data platform. Like it is truly one surface. I think the other thing is that, it's not just for training. Increasingly the important art, especially in kind of what I'll call like the mainstream AI applications, is the management of context. So context engineering kind of became a phrase in June after Toby Lukta and Karpathy sort of blessed it. Our anointed came down and proclaimed the era of context engineering. But it certainly made a lot of things click in my head. And one of them is that, in a lot of ways, context pipelines are going to be the new data pipelines, meaning that context that is fed in to agents, you want to compute it. It's often very expensive to compute it. You want to precisely control the scheduling of it. You want to do quality tests. You want to do LLM as eval, all this stuff. And if you boil down all those issues, they are primarily data pipelining issues. And the orchestrator is really the kind of beating heart of data pipelines. So I think that orchestration is only going to be more and more relevant over time. Because really orchestration is the basis of building data and AI pipelines.
So there's also kind of this more, shallower notion of orchestration, especially in the context of agents, right? So I guess kind of like the LLM becomes kind of like an orchestrator, right?
100%.
So how do you make that distinction between that notion of orchestration and orchestration around context engineering that you just described?
I do. I think there probably needs to be a new term for what you're describing, the sort of
the orchestration,
the probabilistic agentic orchestration.
Yeah, the orchestration that you describe has a much more, solid engineering lineage, right? So it
100%.
and this one is basically just talking to the LLM.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, effectively, an agent is orchestrating tool calls, right? That
Yeah.
is like at its core what it's doing. But you know, orchestration is kind of a gradient here. And it's almost so different. I would like use a different word for it. Um,
Yeah, but that's
we
what they use, though, right? So,
no, I understand the
and
the
actually, it's even funnier than that because when you uh, really drill down and talk to someone who's building an agent, right? You quickly realize, oh, the agent is really just a prompt. So they're just managing a bunch of prompts and orchestrating those prompts, waiting for one prompt to finish. And so when you ask someone, hey, what models are you using? And they'll say, oh, we're using this model. And I'll say, move to this model, it's cheaper. Oh, yeah, we can't do that because we invested so much in these prompts that work with only on this model. And if we make these changes, that's going to break our, I guess, agentic app.
yes. Although there are actually frameworks which are
Yeah,
purportedly help with this.
yeah.
Like DSPY is
ESPN.
really
Yep.
gaining some mind share. I was actually just looking at this weekend. Because everything they're saying makes sense. It's like, why are you doing hard-coded strings? You should be able to more richly interact with prompts and program to an abstraction layer so you can optimize the prompts over time and change underlying
Yeah.
models.
And then there's another tool called BAML, BAML. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I'll have to look at that.
Also open source. Hey, yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is this new thing that you guys released, Compass, right?
Yeah.
Um, and what's interesting about it is that it you guys have a very different take around BI and dashboards in general, right? So the thesis there is that the dashboard in general tells you what happened, uh, but that might not be enough, right? So that might not be enough for the typical user who might want to actually understand the why, right? So walk us through the kind of the origin story of Compass and how you guys settled on this problem.
Yeah, so I think first of all, we don't consider it a BI tool. We we
But
refer
it's
to it as exploratory data analysis,
yeah,
which is
it's kind of like but it definitely covers the people who use BI tools, but expands the range of personas, right?
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Exactly. Um, so where it came from, I think there's a few different threads here. One is that we saw our customers, who are typically the technical leads of data platforms, um, initially in the company, we really focused on the stakeholder relationships between those people and the people building data pipelines. Um, and so we really deeply think about stakeholder relationships. And one thing that we noticed, however, and we felt this also in our sales process, that the business stakeholders that truly get served and make contracting decisions don't see the data platform teams as a source of value. They see them as a cost center. Um, Even though in the end they are consuming data products kind of by extension the data platform team produces and which are completely instrumental to the value of their business. Um, so we saw that. We also lived this for a while in terms of, you know, effectively we did a transition of sales leadership. And so on an interim basis, both Pete and I were much more involved in kind of the day to day of our go-to-market teams. And it was really a like gut punch is the wrong term, but it was interesting to the degree that we had all this valuable data in the data warehouse, and very few, if any, people on our go-to-market team kind of had the wherewithal to be able to leverage it, right? And so a lot of this was actually Pete digging into our sales pipeline using Cursor and like, doing data dumps into Cursor and actually having a great experience interacting with that data. Um, and that's what kind of scratched the itch here, so to speak, kind of our own needs. And then we quickly built this prototype, and like the experiences were magical. And then once we got it into Slack, once we actually kind of backed it with a managed context store, That's kind of one of the things that we do. Um, and really started to build this integrated experience. It was like this absolutely magical experience. So it kind of stemmed from our own needs, part of it just following our nose. Um, and then also I think deeply understanding the dynamic of these various stakeholder relationships that our customers encounter. And between all those things was kind of the genesis of the idea.
So,
I think
so,
the other thing which happened, by the way, is that kind of in the last 6 months, especially with the Sonnet 3.7 plus Claude code release, we just saw like facts on the ground change. We'd always been fairly conservative with AI. And then in the spring, we just saw the models and the workflows above them get so much better. And we're like, oh my God, like you can use this stuff in real use cases now.
so there's a kind of there has been a parallel movement in the kind of data lakehouse, structured data world, right? So where people, when the initial models came out after ChatGPT, everyone got excited. Let's do text to SQL. Oh, it doesn't really work that well out of the box. Let's fine tune. Oh, it works better. But then eventually they all realize, oh, what we really need is some sort of semantic layer. So
Right.
now all these lake house providers, Databricks, of which I'm an advisor, and Snowflake, and a bunch of other, and there's some startups even who are building these semantic layers, which are essentially uh, tools that provide additional context to your LLM when you actually ask the lakehouse or the warehouse questions, and that semantic layers built using whatever query logs, metadata, I guess, organizational data even. They look at, okay, Nick reports to this person who's really the guru of this report, right? So we should look at this person's report instead of Nick's, and so on and so forth. So were you guys following that kind of movement around the semantic layer?
What we found is that the semantic layer sounds great and it makes sense abstractly, but we didn't see it getting adopted broadly. There's also a few different species of semantic layer. Kind of up until now, what it's generally been is the ability to define metrics and measures and all of these different concepts that effectively are inputs into a SQL generation process. So you can, effectively you can kind of model a data warehouse kind of like an OLAP cube. You have a specific metric and you can very easily say like, I want to view this by day or by week or by this
Or
territory.
some of the
And
semantic layers are even actually knowledge graphs, right? So graphs.
that's right. And then there's more advanced ones
Yeah, yeah.
or different ones that kind of have different nature of data. And they've kind of like expanded to define like all metadata that can be attached to a schema.
But
So that's all the way from
basically,
like
the idea is that if you just simply start querying the lake house with your LLM, it's not going to do a good job.
That's right.
Right.
So, what our belief is actually the critical missing piece here is getting the right people to add context to call it a semantic layer. We call it a context store in a governed fashion. So the issue is that semantic layers are a lot of work. It takes an enormous amount of effort to get them spin up. They're often kind of managed by bespoke web applications or tooling that is very challenging to get business stakeholders or the people that actually know the data to use. So our solution to this is to have an extremely lightweight interface to the context store, which lives in Slack next to where you're actually querying the data. So that, because these things are going to screw up, right? They are AIs. Everyone knows that AIs make mistakes now again. And what Compass does is a Slack native collaborative analytics experience. And you can be chatting with this agent we call Compass. And when the business stakeholder sees something's wrong, like a complete outlier win rate for their reps, right? They can just start asking it like, hey, this data looks wrong. What's going on? And then it can do an investigation. And then the person can just say like, hey, you need to remember that like this term in our business actually means this, right? This is a code name that we stopped using in 2024 for this product now. and then it submits a PR, a pull request to a governed context store that is managed like code. And the important thing here is that the business stakeholder can submit it, but the data team is the one that it can approve it. And so the data team can make sure things are getting directionally more correct. And then they can also know what's going on in this context store and like manage it, right? And because it's built on top of Git, you can actually literally check this thing out and like manage it with tools or Claude code or whatever, you know? Like I manage our company's context store, and what that means is that I can like check it out, I can open it up, all the stuff's in the file system, I can type Claude, like Claude code, and I can just ask it, hey, find me all the duplicative context and like compress it, and it goes and it does that, does a great job. Um, and so we really think that this sort of like informal way where you can accrete your way to a more formalized semantic layer is really, really powerful. And this needs to be in addition to ingesting it from other systems that might encode metadata a different way.
Yeah. So
But
so the semantic layer. So I actually my a recent episode of mine was with a startup that's trying to build a semantic layer across different systems, right? So you may be a company that uses both Databricks and Snowflake,
right.
and they'll try to build a semantic layer across the things you have. And a couple of things to that. One is there is somewhat of a cold start problem in the sense that even they don't say, look, we're not going to solve your problem instantaneously. It's going to take a week or two because we need to go into your logs and ingest. And first we'll work with your data platform team. They'll be the first users, and then as they get more confident, we'll expand, right? Because otherwise, so one of the couple of observations they made is obviously this is something you already know probably is that if you turn on the system and it fails, then people lose confidence and never use it again.
That's right.
And then secondly, the other thing they realized early is that actually users their prompts are not very good to start. Some of them treat the prompt window like a search window almost.
Right.
Yeah, and so, yeah. So what are your answers to those things, like somewhat of the cold start problem and user training?
So I'll start with the cold start problem. Like I said, like our approach to doing this is to make the feedback loop between the business stakeholders and the context store extremely lightweight in Slack and sort of highly encouraged by the product. And if you combine that by it demonstrating very quickly with a very fast feedback loop that like, okay, I corrected this context, I'm going to reissue the query and see it incorporate this new information and produce the query
But
results
how do
correctly.
you roll out the system right away across everyone, or you have
100%.
limited rollout to much more savvy users first and then slowly?
Well, we typically what happens is that a data team onboards,
Yep.
right? They like hook up the data warehouse connections. That starts the initial context collection because we like query all the schema and we do table
And then the
samples, all
data
that
team
stuff.
starts using it.
And the data team starts using it, and they'll seed it with like the most obvious problems, right? Like we worked with an investor firm, and they had a product they code named Core, and they knew that would confuse the LLM because like Core has so many meetings. So like they like very quickly kind of added that knowledge to their to the semantic layer, the context store. Um, but what happens is that one, the system's very transparent about how it works. So the business stakeholders understand that custom context is getting injected into it, and we are very transparent about that. And then an interesting thing happens because you can see it get better over time as a result of the context store. Psychologically, the data team takes ownership over it, and they become like they're like proud of it, right? So it kind of changes them from like an analyst who's manually fielding data requests and writing SQL to being context engineers that are governing the process of generating SQL that the business stakeholders are doing. And it's this incredibly powerful organizational dynamic. Um,
So for the non-technical user, I guess when you say transparent, how does that work? So
So
do you
it's
do you actually do you explain this is how I arrived at the sales forecast for the Southeast region in Q4?
That's right. So what we attempt to do is while the LLM or the agent is thinking, it's very trans. It says, I am searching data documentation for X. I am searching the context for X. I am building this SQL query. Okay, I have found this, therefore blah. And you can kind of follow it along. And then once it's done and has produced an answer, it kind of gathers all that up and summarizes what it did. And you can always go back to we have like, you can go back to a web UI and see like the full history. But you're kind of like playing with it and it's fun. So you kind of want to follow along. And we have found that that teaches the users how the system works, how to guide it, and also builds trust in it. And we also make sure not to overpromise, like I think that's some of the failings of these hyperformal semantic layers is that they kind of claim too much precision when actually complete precision is nearly impossible.
So how do you communicate that you're not overpromising?
So I think it is a few things, both subtle and explicit. Nearly every thread contains data viz, and we just produce an image that's like AI might be inaccurate. And then there's also like more cutesy stuff actually, where we the bot by default talks in all lowercase and is a little cheeky, and that communicates a certain level of informality. I know you might not believe it, but it actually makes a big difference. And then the other thing is that it's explaining as it goes along, like, oh, I'm not sure about this, et cetera, et cetera. And then as you're asking it questions, you're like, hey, this doesn't look right. It will preemptively suggest that it needs to correct its own context. So between all those things, it's fairly transparent about how it's working. Um,
But does it
and
so obviously if I just put in there sales, will it say, well, what do you mean by sales? So in other words, does it ask follow-up questions to understand exactly what I'm looking for?
yes, it asks for, it's a full agentic loop.
Yeah.
So if it can't satisfy the request or it's not underspecified, it will prompt the user to be more specific. Um, or, I would need to, kind of tempted to open up right now and just do that exact test. But I'm almost certain it would ask for a clarification in that case.
So
Another
the
example, go ahead.
so the semantic layer folks, right? So uh, have like I said, so they tell you upfront this is going to take a while, and this is true across all these people who build semantic layers. I don't know to what degree they say that, but at least some of them do. But also they try to do a combination of things, right? So one, like you said, there's the user contribution, but then they also try to automate. Obviously, they're going to go through the query logs, the metadata, whatever business repositories,
Yep.
old reports, and things like that. So, do you folks do the same thing? You combine some automation and some user generated. Uh, what do you call your thing? It's not semantic layer. What is it?
The context store.
The context store. Yeah. So user contributions to the context store is both automatically created, but also there's user contributions to it.
That's right. And this thing, right? It's um, and we're working on making it more extensible as we speak. But it is designed to integrate raw metadata from other external systems, and then also be a substrate by which you can compute derived context and persist that so it can be directly ingested from an LLM. Um, so,
Do you do
and
you do you take advantage of organizational data? Like here's the analyst team, and then within the analyst team, these are the people that are experts in sales, and these are the people who are experts in marketing.
We do. And in fact, we enrich data from public like LinkedIn profiles and stuff.
Okay.
And what that allows you to do is when someone signs on, we actually kind of like greet them and suggest a bunch of interesting analyses they can do. And what we can do is basically pull in their like where they are in the org chart and some personal information, and then also load in all the parts of the schema that we believe are relevant to their world, and then kind of mash that up, and then it cooks for a while and suggests all these like very real analyses. So that's like a critical part of our onboarding flow, actually.
So what is the actual difference, Nick, between what people are calling the semantic layer and what you're calling the context store? Or are they
I think
basically the same thing?
I guess the context store we like to phrase it like that because it's more generic than a semantic layer typically. And the we think that the kind of the
I,
one of
I
defining
don't know who came up with the term semantic layer, by the way. It's not
no one
satisfying.
understands it.
It's not satisfying, right? Because it can mean anything.
That's right. And I think
Yeah,
that
yeah.
the defining one of the defining aspects of the context store is that it's backed by a Git repository. So, in our opinion, kind of context is a new code insofar as it's bytes on disk that determine system behavior.
But
And it's
someone can do that.
extremely,
Someone can do that to their semantic layer.
that's right. There are
Yeah,
semantic layers where you can check in YAML to
yeah.
source control and whatnot. So some semantic layers do that. Some semantic layers are stored dynamically.
I guess there's no
Um,
universal definition of semantic layer, but basically I associate it with the lake house warehouse people.
I mean,
Is that right?
yes, it
Yeah.
doesn't. It's like it's definitely mostly associated with data warehouses, and I guess by extension, lake houses.
Yeah, Snowflake and Databricks, for example, talk about it, right?
That's right. I mean, part of it's the lineage of it too, right? Like the semantic layers didn't used to be this generic. Like originally, they were like very specific metadata files that effectively define metrics and measures that then fed directly into deterministic SQL code gen, right? And they've been kind of generalizing over time a bit.
Yeah, it's
I
almost. Do
think
you remember, Nick? There was a generation of startups. In fact, I advised one that got actually hired of the metadata stores.
Uh, I mean, they still exist, right?
Some of
Like
them do.
Atlan's a metadata
Yeah, yeah,
store,
yeah. Some of them
and
do, right? So, but there was a generation right around almost the same time as the orchestration startups came out. But then,
yes,
so I think of the semantic layers as kind of like what happened to the metadata store in some ways. Is that fair?
I mean, it's a similar layer, I
Yeah.
guess, to say, but I guess if you're saying that a lot of those startups kind of
Or
went
what
away or were
that work is a natural kind of application to, you know,
100%,
right?
100%,
So,
yeah,
so 'cause some of them chase the wrong thing, like data discovery, because they came of age before this LLMs, right? So,
yeah. I mean, I don't know if I call it the wrong thing. Data discovery is important.
yeah, yeah, data discovery and data governance, right? So, what
Right.
were their applications that they were going after? And so the context store, in some ways, is a semantic layer. In some ways,
In some ways, yes. It can leverage semantic layers. So, there's nothing that prevents you because it's all checked in, right? Those semantic layer variants that are like checked in YAML, right? There's no reason why you couldn't actually kind of leverage that data, in fact, that tooling from within our context store, because it ends up just like you can feed it into the agent or even do explicit tool calls.
so,
Um,
but the context store in the context of what you folks do is only meant really to be the main audience for the context store is the data team and the data platform team, right? So the
that's
end
right.
user might be contributing to the context store, but they never actually try to browse it or look at it.
That's right. I mean, there's going to be some gray areas here, but largely the goal is for the business stakeholders to be abstracted away from, at minimum, like the inner workings. Like they shouldn't have to touch GitHub, for example. As time goes on, we will be adding APIs over this thing and likely be able to index it and view it in different ways, but we're fairly set on having the source of truth be an underlying Git repository because of all the benefits.
Yeah. So if you have a database or data warehouse or data lakehouse, obviously there's a schema. So I'm assuming the schema is part of the context store.
That's right.
And so what is the context store a graph or a table or what is it?
It's very simple.
Yeah.
It's a tree of files,
Okay.
and we have a search index over it. So you can search it by keywords, and we'll add embeddings and more advanced vector search as time goes on. But it's kind of like, the simplest thing that can possibly work, but it works shockingly well. You just have to intelligently and reasonably subset the context that you want to feed into this thing. And then you just jam it in the context window with a decent prompt, and the performance is quite good.
So the reason I opened up by using the term BI, which it seems like you don't like.
No, I
uh,
don't like it. My big joke is that, I mean, you can make the same joke about orchestration too. It's like a category that Dostoevsky invented. Like all BI tools are terrible. They're just all terrible in their own way, right?
yeah.
And people can say that about orchestrators too. But I think what's key is that we're not trying to like completely
Yeah.
displace
Yeah.
those things or say that they don't have a place in the data estate. Um, this is
But
like a tool with a different purpose.
right, but there's some overlap, right? Because basically
100%.
I can ask questions and this tool will answer questions, right? But if I
That's right.
want historical charts, I can just go to the BI tool. Maybe there's
That's
already
right.
a dashboard for it,
That's
right?
right. So I guess the way I would think about it is that tons of dashboards in a BI tool in practice are in reality overly expensive exploratory data analysis, meaning that some business stakeholder has asked for some data, some analyst dutifully presented a dashboard, and then that stakeholder maybe looked at it once or twice and it goes like effectively unused. So that 80% of dashboards that are in reality exploratory data analysis, we believe can be captured and modeled with this tool. Leaving the 10 to 20% of dashboards that truly drive a mission critical process or like drive comp processes or some place where like highly deterministic behavior is an absolute requirement. That's not our game. But what you are allowed to do is you can kind of, you know, like you can create one of these analyses and iterate on it. And then once it's good, you can say like, hey, I want this posted to this Slack channel every Monday at 8 a.m. before this meeting. And it'll like create it on demand and give me a report. Like I get a daily report of of like engagement with our products. And I asked it stuff like, okay, tell me who's newly signed on, tell me who's the most interesting usage, tell me who's dropped off in usage in the last week, and produce me a report. And it just posts to a Slack channel every day with that. And doing that equivalent thing in a BI tool is not really possible today.
So exploratory data analysis, or what some analysts would call ad hoc queries in some ways, right? So,
That's right.
so the data that you're targeting are the structured data sets and the kinds of business questions that people will ask usually assume there's some lakehouse or warehouse to ask this question of.
That's right.
So what are the integrations that you currently have? So I'm assuming you integrate with all of the lake houses and warehouses. What
We
else?
integrate with most of the lake houses and warehouses. There's more spinning on every day. And that's just kind of the like out of the box, extremely easy spin up, like, you know, bring a data warehouse up. And you just have to basically insert your creds, provide your creds to the system, and you're off to the races. But yeah, no, integrations are going to be an important part of the story, both with data warehouses, but with other semantic layers and sources of context.
But Nick, you try to hit the warehouse or lake house, right? So in other words, if I ask a question, and I could answer it by going directly to Salesforce, or I can go to the warehouse. You would go to the warehouse.
That's right.
Yeah.
Um,
And then
these,
if the question I'm asking cannot be answered by the warehouse or lake house, do you try to answer it by kind of cobbling together? What the what a skilled analyst would do is build some sort of pipeline to cobble together the data that he or she needs and then answers the question.
Right. So we do support the authoring of data pipelines. So here's an interesting feature we have, which is that if you ask questions and then you determine that, or the LLM determines that the data that you need is not in the warehouse, it'll actually automatically create a data request in the ticketing
Okay.
system of your choice, and it sucks up all the context, and it actually ends up being shockingly good. Because then you understand like who asked for it, why they care. You have like all this information about what it tried to do in order to
So this
satisfy the
goes to the
request.
data team.
That goes to the data team. And then
Okay.
from there, that's the perfect input into a code gen step to actually produce that data pipeline.
And then
So
and
we have
then
this
uh,
like fully agentic governed data ops workflow, which is really compelling, actually.
and then what happens to that one-off data pipeline? Does it then get kind of added to the context store as if someone asks this question again, what happens?
So that's where like an integration with Dagster comes into play, right? So like you can like the ideal solution is that you can press a button and it scaffolds a new PR that targets your data platform and actually produces the production asset. And then you develop that pipeline, push it to production, and then as a result of integration, you can feed that data back into the context store. So what's nice is that you can kind of, you can imagine a process where you had an exploratory data analysis, the thread kind of stops at the data request, but then when that task is completed, that thread is pinged again, and you can just like redo the same question. You can see it touch the new table. So you can kind of like see the system build over time. But that, doing that part takes time, right? You have to build a data pipeline um, and add enough metadata so that the system knows about it.
So you're early on in the process, right? So you fast forward 6 months from now, you have a company who's using Compass heavily, and I assume then the data team is actually happy for two reasons. One is they don't have to do these ad hoc reports and ad hoc queries, and then secondly, also uh, they're seeing the types of things they need to build, almost the pipelines they have to build, right? So
Exactly.
a bunch of people keep asking this question, which we can't really support in the current warehouse or lake house, and so we need to add this, right?
That's right.
So
That's right.
so that is that already happening or not yet?
Yeah, I mean, this is like we're still very early,
Right.
right? And we're actually, it's October 6th today. I think our first, we started building this early in the summer, and we launched to a private wait list 3 weeks ago. We're opening it up to anyone this week. And, we have lots of users spinning up now. And it's really magical to see the engagement. We have 100% retention after 4 weeks of usage, which actually is like unheard of in this domain. Um, and we've certainly seen it, what I can speak to is internally. One of the reasons why we have such conviction is just how strong product market fit is internally. Like most of the company are weekly or daily actives, and it has completely transformed the life of our analyst. Um, he has a different job now. He is no longer manually authoring SQL. He is managing the context store and giving guidance, and like most of our sales team is engaged with the product. Um, it's like totally remarkable, actually.
But the
Um,
one thing that I guess I don't quite get, Nick, honestly, is why Slack as the UI?
I think because one, no one wants to go to another web app. It's where everyone lives already. And in fact, I think that this sort of multiplayer agentic chat with integrated workflows is as foundational of an interaction primitive as single player chat is for consumer. So not only is it why Slack is that I couldn't imagine not doing it in Slack. So a lot of our favorite tools that we use, like Pylon for support or Incident IO for incident manage, are like highly Slack native, where most of the people that interact with the product do it from within Slack, and then the admins or kind of the power users are the one that use the web UI, because no one wants to go to web UIs. No one wants to learn an entire new ontology. It's like it's too much, right? And
I
so
mean,
the
come on,
promise of
Chat GPT UI is so dead simple, right? Gemini UI, dead simple.
That's right. And this is like Slack, you just imagine it's just multiplayer ChatGPT, right? But with like more integrations with
Oh,
your
I see.
enterprise and the ability to pull in anyone that's needed, So
But
it's
then
just
now
like
you have to kind of build this for Teams, Discord.
that's right. So, there's no free lunch there, and I highly suspect there will be frameworks built to help with cross-platform. We're very early on the journey, but Slack still has enormous market penetration. And then if you do that plus MS Teams, like you're good to go. We have peers, Silicon Valley peers who have built integrations with those platforms, and it's not fun, but it's totally possible. The but no, like the Slack integration is just like you know, I brag in our demos that like you will not see a web UI this entire time, right? You are in Slack, you're in the tool where you're using it. Ironically, I have a very mixed relationship with Slack. I actually think it's a terrible platform for its original mission, which is like communicating human authored information
Yeah,
internally.
it's
It's too
terrible for
noisy, it's
that.
crazy.
It's terrible for
But
that.
for driving chat ops or workflows, I actually think it's like totally killer. It's great. Like actually interacting with applications in the context of Slack and being able to mention bots and other people and bring them in. It's an incredibly powerful platform.
So you don't see, so why isn't the more natural thing evolution will be, a chat GPT like interface where you can collaborate?
Because they don't, I mean,
It's like
they're it,
it's in a browser, you don't need to install an app. And
right, but
once you do it for a browser, then you're good to go across all companies, right?
once once your entire employee base is in such an application and you can mention them and bring them in and you can construct individual channels that subset the conversation, that could change the calculus. But for now, like Slack is the only
Yeah,
place you can do
why?
that.
So
Like here's another example of how useful it is, right? The channel abstraction,
yeah,
incredibly useful in this context because we have a sales compass channel and a marketing compass channel. And they have access to different data warehouse tables, but in fact, they also point to different
I see.
context stores
Right.
because the same words have different meanings in those two different contexts. So and everyone gets the concept of a channel, so you
The
don't have to
channel is,
explain anything.
yeah. So I guess the collaboration, you can do that. I mean, because look, Google Docs, you can do it, right? But the channel thing might be the thing that really
That's
uh,
right.
makes it work.
Plus,
So
you
I
get
wonder,
emojis in
so
Slack.
what?
Everyone loves emojis for operational workflows.
So I wonder what companies like Notion will do then, right?
What companies like Notion?
Yeah, because they're in that they have they have the they have the web app where people are going in there and collaborating, but I don't know if they have the notion of channel where
Well,
you can
if
carry
history
on.
is any judge, they will fairly clumsily expand to every adjacency available to them.
Yeah,
So we'll see where it goes. Their AI capabilities are actually quite good, but
yeah.
I could skip the new. I don't need another new entrant into calendaring and email.
Yeah.
So I hope they can control themselves.
So let me close because you're a long time respected hacker. in Silicon Valley. Uh, so what's your take on these coding tools
Oh, it's
and the future of software engineering?
oh, I've never thought the super future of software engineering was so bright. I I kind of in the last few months have gotten Claude Code pilled. Um, and I very
It's
quickly,
expensive though, man. It's
oh,
expensive.
I know. Within the first 2 weeks, I didn't have a Max account. In the first 2 weeks, I spent $3,000 of using it. But I went from one of those engineers who like just kind of used ChatGPT to write individual functions to someone where 90% of the code I write is AI generated. And I basically don't interact with an IDE anymore. I go straight from the terminal to my code review tool. Um, and it's been the most transformative set of tools that I have encountered in my entire career. I'm super bullish on it. Um, and what's really exciting for me is that I think that the using these tools in the context of large software systems with many engineers in them is a totally undiscovered country. And I'm like very enthused about contributing to solving that problem because I just think I think it's so interesting.
So how does
I
this?
actually hate the term vibe coding.
Oh yeah, yeah, I hate
I
that
hate
term.
it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I prefer to call it AI accelerated software engineering. The
So how do you think this impacts? So if you were back at Meta, Facebook, and you had like a brand new, fresh college grad engineer, what's the before you can pair them with an experienced engineer, they learn that way. So what is the career progression now of someone who's new?
It's a very good question, and I don't know the answer. Um, the I don't know the answer of the right career progression. Um, you know, I do think the
I guess
the way I would.
the optimistic thing will be, well, before I had to ask questions from these senior people, but now I can just go to Claude Code and I don't need to be mentored anyone. Maybe Claude Code even knows even the style and coding conventions of our team and whatever.
Oh, 100%. Like
Right.
the fastest way to onboard onto a new system now is
Yeah,
just to check out the repo, like physically,
yeah,
and then open up Claude Code or Codex or whatever and just start asking questions like, how does this work? And like it gets you remarkably good answers. And I think what you can do is like you can very quickly explore to the limits of your knowledge. And then like there's going to be like barriers where you're like, okay, now I officially don't understand how this works. But you can like you can do remarkable stuff because you can't it's not like you not only can you explore just the physical code base in its current state, but you can understand, you can travel across time because there's source control. You
yeah.
can be like, why does this code exist? I don't get it. Can you explore the Git history and follow along and tell me like what was happening when every change made to it and like give me an answer? And it might have to cook for a while, but it can give you a good it can so in terms of learning machines, I think it can dramatically accelerate learning. I think the interesting question is, can you then translate that into understanding the primitives well enough that it's kind of coding to, so that you have intuition about how these systems are acting and can you fix really hard bugs or observability issues, stuff like that. And I don't know how that's going to play out, but yeah, I think actually all these companies who are like not hiring junior people because they think they can quote replace them with AI are not just acting immorally, but actually quite stupidly. Because I actually think the younger people are absolute learning machines and will be far more conversant with AI native tools. And I think the bigger companies will rue the day that they slowed down their intern and newer grad programs. And I think that's actually an opportunity, an arbitrage opportunity for smaller companies, which I'm excited to take advantage of.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And of course, for me, uh, my concern with these tools is one, the cost.
Right.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so that's why I'm kind of trying to play around with this notion of, okay, so I'll use the cheaper models as much as I can
Right.
and only turn to this Claude Code, which is arguably one of the better, if not the best model for this purposes, uh, if I have to. And then the other thing that I don't like about it is, in many ways you get to you can't code anymore unless you're hooked up to the cloud. What if you're on an airplane and offline? You're suddenly not productive anymore, right?
That's right. Nope, there's definitely downsides with everything.
Yeah, I guess you can use Olama and run some of these local models, but they're just not as good.
No, and it's very slow and hard on batteries and stuff. No, I mean it's this weird, strange new world, And I actually think one of the things I'm interested in working on in the context of using agents in these large software systems is being more efficient with token
What?
consumption and production. I think there's a lot of room there too to do much more intelligent things so you can keep less tokens in your context, use smaller models, have more precise outcomes, less turns of the model. I think there's at the application layer, there's a ton of opportunity for order of magnitude improvement in terms of model performance and context. One of the things that Boris from Anthropic says, he's the creator of Claude Code, which I totally agree with, is that the models, the progression of the underlying models are outstripping the ability of the application layer to kind of keep up and effectively produce them. And there's probably even if the models halted today in their progress, there's years of work to do in the application layer to take advantage of them. And I intuitively think that is correct.
Yeah, because I mean, uh, in many ways, right now, you get the feeling that it's brute forcing things in some ways, right? Like, here's a Jira ticket, and then Claude Code will just go nuts and brute force it, and
Oh
could
yeah,
it could cost you much more than you planned. Let's put it that way.
totally,
Uh,
totally.
but then it will come up with something, right? Uh, and the question there is, like you said, the efficiency and who's working on that, right? So, because the foundation model builders are building foundation models, and then I guess the startups in this space, the cursors, the replets, the lovables, I'm not actually sure they're really care that much how efficient things are because they're just passing on the cost to you, right?
Or not, and they're losing tons of
Yeah,
money. So yeah, I mean, I think currently the economics of those aforementioned businesses are pretty upside down. And I think one of the smart things that Claude Code has done is they have trained the users to understand that it's expensive.
yeah.
At least there's transparency, and you can you kind of morally accept the consumption-based pricing in that model, which I think actually puts them in a good position to deliver wins for their users. But we'll see how it could be also that once all this compute lands that's been purchased over the last 3 years, and then all the portable nuclear reactors, and God knows what's going to happen, that the economics might turn upside down, but or might change fundamentally. But
Or we may
it's
be
very
at,
interesting times.
or we may be at the equivalent of the telecom build out during the dot-com era.
That is the analogy. But I don't know. I was on that train 6 to 9 months ago, but now I think all this compute's going to be used pretty productively.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. And with that, thank you, Nick.